Good afternoon. I think it's already past 12, so thank you for waiting for this presentation. Thank you, Ulrich. As we anticipate you within the agenda, my presentation is a little bit related to a completely different topic, the renminbi internationalization. And I'm trying to link this process within the relevance for the German banking sector. I think that we all have heard about the renminbi internationalization and how this process had took off in a very short period of time. We all are reading the news and reading all the statements made by the government, the Chinese government related the growth that they want to give to the currency. So my presentation, I would like to combine some different aspects related to, and here's the agenda, the renminbi rising as a leading international currency, how we see the renminbi as a currency for trade settlement, renminbi-denominated investments, bond issuances, and potential other financial products. Of course, those different uses for the currency are in a completely different stage of development, so I will try to bring you some examples and put into context how this renminbi is growing internationally. Later on, just some key reforms and initiatives that are developed and implemented by the Chinese government towards this renminbi internationalization. And then linked to the most recent, let's say, changes in the regulatory landscape to implement the renminbi internationalization that are related to the Chinese clearing banks. And the least known but very in trend now, the China International Payment System initiative. And then finally to link all those regulatory changes and let's say framework towards what can the German banking sector contribute to. So first, in terms of trade settlement, what we have seen in renminbi is that renminbi has already achieved a very significant place within the trade settlement worldwide. It's already within the 10 most used currencies in terms of trade. However, and that's the most significant part of the trade that the renminbi trade as a trade currency, is that by the end of 2014, and in fact in March this year, it already took over the leadership or the position of the Canadian dollar, and is very close to the Japanese yen in terms of level of use. Of course, it's far away from the USD dollar with a 40% stake. It's renminbi, it's already used 2.5% within all the trade settlements worldwide. But the fact that it's already within the top 5 or 6 largest currencies used for trade makes the renminbi a significant, let's say, challenge for all the currencies worldwide, and also set up the base to continue growing. How we link this, of course, what we have seen and mentioned by all our previous speakers and also by my colleague, Mr. Miratsky, the growth in Chinese investments outside of China, of course, has been significantly and accelerated in the last 5 years. And in Europe, in this case, is becoming one of the most important trading partners within the whole export-oriented economy. What we have seen also is that within EU trade partners, Germany is the largest one. So, of course, Germany now is playing a significant role in terms of helping to speed up this renminbi internationalization. In terms of investments, the renminbi, it's playing let's say, a different role as we compare with the trade settlements. What we have seen is that renminbi as an international reserve currency that is not officially appointed yet, but it has been used. There is some information within some central banks, mostly in Asia, that they already use renminbi as a currency for reserves. However, it is still less than 3% of worldwide reserves. In terms of renminbi-denominated assets held by foreign counterparties, we have read, and that's the latest disclosure by the People's Bank of China statistics, that around 580 billion euros within foreign investors. Of course, that's significantly concentrated in deposits, and we all know that, as also mentioned by our general manager, the investment strategy of Chinese investors has been very oriented towards deposits and, let's say, fixed income at the beginning. But now, with the renminbi internationalization and with the opening of the markets and the opening of bond issuance from international counterparties, this could change dramatically. Instead of being focused only on deposits, move towards other financial securities. What we have seen as well, very, very recently in terms of regulatory changes, the connection and integration between the Shanghai and Hong Kong stock exchange. And this, as already also mentioned by our previous speakers, already speeded up the volume of investment between Hong Kong, offshore and onshore China. And this is giving a lot of opportunities to mainland investors and to foreign investors to understand and anticipate any potential opening of the market so far. However, of course, and in terms, as I mentioned before, in terms of investment, there is still I will say the opening statement that the renminbi is not yet an official reserve currency, is not included in the SDR, but that decision will be taken in November this year. The Chinese government has been making very interesting statements about the need of enlarge the basket and not just include the pound sterling, US dollar, euro, and the yen. However, we know that this decision is within the IMF, and the decision is based on two very important statements. First, the renminbi need to meet the freely convertibility, let's say, and they need to achieve the vote of all the members of this committee. To achieve the freely usable and convertibility definition, that's something that is within the IMF statements. We need to understand what this freely definition means, so we can have some different interpretations on that. However, the fact that the renminbi is already worldwide usage currency for trade and for investments, and speeding up the process with these renminbi offshore issuances is giving little by little those, let's say, the framework towards being defined as a freely usable currency. The renminbi as a linked with investment, but bond issuances, that at the end of the day is what it's leading towards the offshore use of renminbi as an investment currency. What we have seen, and of course, it has been driven by offshore issuances, dim sum bonds in Hong Kong, that has been the main hub for offshore renminbi issuances, followed by Singapore, and in a less extent now Europe becoming a very important player in this, on this arena. However, we still see that renminbi offshore bond issuances are led by state-owned commercial banks, Bank of China, ICBC, China Construction Bank, China Communications Bank, by the sovereign and also by the state-owned enterprises. So we still lack of a diversity of counterparties that allow diversification of risks in terms of counterparty risk. What we have seen is that, as I mentioned, Hong Kong and Singapore had become the main financial hubs. However, and that's the statement also by different capitals and different European countries, that they want to become an active part of this renminbi offshore market and an active part of this renminbi internationalization. We have seen that, for example, Luxembourg is a very, very interesting financial hub because it's canalized a lot of Chinese investments through Luxembourg. And of course, it's recognized as one of the largest financial hubs for renminbi-denominated assets. There is a significant concentration of renminbi deposits in Luxembourg. However, and of course, London wants to take part of it. And of course, Frankfurt now being recognized that also as a renminbi financial hub, with the latest appointment of the Bank of China as one of the clearing banks, with the initiative of the German government to increase the trade with China, and with another number of initiatives that are connected towards the development of the Chinese and German market. What we have seen in terms of bond issuances as well is very interesting. We see a lot of international counterparties that are very interested to demonstrate that their commitment towards this renminbi internationalization program. I will say just here in the slide, you see some names: the UK Treasury, IFC, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Caterpillar, and KfW. Those are not, let's say, just random names. Those are very important counterparties and very important entities that are becoming more willing to diversify the funding sources, but promoting also the renminbi internationalization. The fact that the UK Treasury issued a renminbi bond last year just makes very clear the commitment of the Great Britain towards this path. The IFC also making the statement, the official statement, that they want this renminbi internationalization to develop further. So we just need now to see a second round of new corporates and new financial institutions issuing renminbi to provide different counterparty risk to Chinese investors. Another very important topic that is interesting to these bond issuances is the current difference between mainland issuances and offshore issuances. We all have heard about the panda bonds. That is a very nice name, very interesting, but it's still not picking up and speeding up the process. However, we have seen Daimler last year issuing the first panda bond, and of course that's it's also a commitment towards the development of the mainline or the onshore bond market. But we also heard recently the commitment and a statement from the IFC saying that they are in very already finished discussions to issue panda bonds by a significant amount no later than year-end 2015. However, and that's something that is very important to mention, onshore issuances are still in a very early stage because of regulatory hurdles. Capital controls, the requirements that need to be Chinese GAAP accounting, at least 3 years of financial information, and a series of regulatory approvals that are making the process not very easy. However, we also have heard from Chinese statements that the only way to make these panda bonds to speed up is to flexibilize the regulatory hurdles. And that's something that we believe that could happen sooner than later. It cannot be that there is such a significant difference between onshore and offshore renminbi issuances. In terms of other financial products, it's very interesting that it's still in a very early stages. However, with this, and it's mainly related to the trade. Renminbi-denominated trade settlements reached 22% over 2014, and that's leading up to international banks and also Chinese banks to provide services in terms of risk management towards foreign exchange, options, and any other derivatives related to and linked to the renminbi. Also, there is now a more interest within interest rate swaps related to the Shanghai Interbank Offered Rate. That was a recent, let's say not recent, but an initiative related to providing lending in Chinese interest rate index. And some specific products that have been developed now for the Shanghai Free Trade Zone residents that will be in a way more under more open market conditions. So we see a very interesting development towards offering another kind of financial services, of course linked to the renminbi, but with let's say the main objective of offering corporations, financial institutions, and international players to be able to use the renminbi within all their transactions and not just for trade. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to make also the renminbi internationalization process to be settled in a very solid base with a financial system that is supporting in every single aspect this process with the financial products that are going to allow those corporations and those entities to be able to manage any kind of risk related to the renminbi. Just now to give you a little bit of a historic background about the steps towards this renminbi internationalization. We're going to go back to 2007, that it's still, let's say, recent period, but that's a very key year because it was the first dim sum bond issued by the China Development Bank. After 2007, we all know that the financial crisis was started with a very, very significant effects for all the world, and also was a very interesting case study and learning process for China towards their development and their opening to the international market. So every single initiative and regulatory change was very clearly planned and started with, let's say, pilot programs to test if the changes on the regulatory changes will be successful enough and will be manageable by the Chinese in a way that will allow the Chinese government to understand the dynamics of that more open market and be able to accept it at the end of the day. We see in 2008 that it was the first bilateral swap arrangements, and then now we have China having 30 swap arrangements with 30 countries. 2009 just was the first year in which the renminbi, cross-border renminbi usage was allowed. And then we moved to, for example, 2013, in which we have the plan for the free trade zones. 2014 with the initiative of the Silk Road, One Road, One Belt, that we already mentioned several times during these presentations. And the connection between the stock exchange allowing investors to move towards Hong Kong and start testing the market in Shanghai. And this year, I will just wanted to mention three very important new regulatory changes. First is Luxembourg joined the RQFI. That was not within the list of RQFI investors. However, this is a very important step because, of course, Luxembourg was the main financial hub for the renminbi. So it was a little bit of a contradiction that being the largest offshore center for renminbi still didn't have an RQFII quota. What we have seen also very interesting changes is that it was an official expansion of the deposit interest rate to allow mainline investors to have more different investment opportunities and to flexibilize also the interest rate market that has been one of the key issues of the Chinese government under the agenda of trying to move towards a more market-driven financial system. But we also saw this year that the deposit insurance system has been approved and will be officially in place from the second semester this year. And that's also something very interesting to give the confidence to investors and also to the population in China that the financial system is robust and will provide security to keep deposits in mainland and not just move everything outside of China when there is the opportunity. Also, as was mentioned before in this presentation, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, has been already settled. There is the expectation that it will be operational by the end of the year. However, there are still some regulatory internal governance issues that they need to be solved. But this would also lead, and as was also mentioned by our general manager, by Mr. Miratsky, and by all other speakers, that this will lead a completely different wave in terms of funding sources and funding alternatives towards infrastructure projects. Countries that have been in a more developing phase and they need resources and that they need the support of different financial institutions that are not only concentrated on the IMF, the World Bank, or so on and so forth. However, all those different historic achievements within this renminbi internationalization that looks very nice, the international community is still waiting for more. And I just want to quote here something that was was quoted by Deng Xiaoping, that China is crossing the river by feeling the stones. For us, that's a kind of a cliche that we want, as a Western mentality, we want changes to happen very fast. However, for them, this is a process that will take time, but they want to make it right. The international community is waiting for a speed up of this process. And it's very interesting that now in the latest intervention in front of the IMF, the China representative has said that China is committed towards a freely usable development of the renminbi, that they are now in the program of having different channels for cross-border investments in which they're going to allow retail or individual investors to move and to open to different investment opportunities outside of China. Of course, now the Shenzhen Hong Kong Stock Connect will also take place. And that they're going to start opening programs to non-residents to be able to issue freely. The definition of freely, of course, is a little bit under control still as a pilot program, to issue in the domestic market, and that's related to the panda bonds that we mentioned before. So there is the initiatives to make this, and there is the commitment of the government to open the market. However, we cannot expect that that's going to be based on our definition of a timely manner. Probably that's going to take more time, but that's the way that they are promoting this renminbi internationalization. However, and that's from the international community, what we're expecting to happen is, of course, that the renminbi should be included in the SDR. That's, I will say, it's up to the IMF at the end of the day, decide if the renminbi is really a freely usable and convertible currency. We are expecting domestic financial market liberalization, interest rate liberalization, cap removed to the loan-to-deposit ratio to have a banking system that is more market-driven instead of government-driven. The loan-to-deposit ratio right now, it has a cap of 75%. If that's open and that can reach freely 100%, there's estimation that will be 3 trillion renminbi available in the financial market in mainland China for growth. And of course, we expect also a fully opening of the domestic stock market for foreign investors, liberalization of the capital account, and full convertibility of the renminbi. All those expectations by the international community, of course, are under within the program of opening the renminbi and renminbi internationalization by the Chinese government. However, we need to think that those are not minor and just tiny things that need to be achieved. And as also the representative of China in front of IMF said in his speech, there is the high probability that this is going to be, the movement is going to be towards a controlled or managed flexibility of the currency, because they learned from the mistakes of a lot of countries within the crisis of 2008, and they do not want to be subject to such a turmoil or global turmoil just because they want to be connected and open their borders and open the capital accounts. So probably it was a before and after 2008, and that's why this is the process of renminbi internationalization has been very detailed studied and in I would say with different milestones that are achieved in a very programmed and cautious way. But we expect, of course, that this will happen in the medium term. Now connecting to the main and probably the most important things that have been happening within the renminbi as an international currency, there is a significant speed of the opening of clearing banks in worldwide, and connecting also to our speaker, earlier speaker related to the Bank of China, importance in this renminbi internationalization path. The Bank of China has been appointed within 7 out of 14 countries as the clearing bank. And clearing banks are, of course, facilitating the renminbi settlement and giving confidence to investors towards investing and using this currency going forward. We see that the Chinese authorities are setting up the financial infrastructure towards renminbi convertibility. Still, there is a lot to do, but now there is at least the opportunities to use directly clearing in Europe or in one of those 14 countries, and not the need to go to Hong Kong or to mainland China. However, what is still mentioned in the international community, that there's still the lack of overall liquidity of the renminbi is one of the hurdles to make the renminbi an international currency. However, and trying to tackle this aspect about liquidity, one of the new developments that is related to the clearing and the settlement of the renminbi has been this China International Payment System. That probably you haven't heard that much about that because it's something very recent, and it's very, I would say, low profile because there are still not official statements about this system. However, there is the intention that this system will be available in a basic operational framework within the end of 2015. There are some comments that there are already 20 banks in the list of testing this basic functionality. The names of those banks for sure are not being disclosed. And the importance of this system is that will allow real-time settlement. And that's already tackling a barrier that is the time difference zones and the challenge of having settlements in different time zones within China and Europe. This system will also, and that's some statements, this is completely based on public information, that some people related to this matter said that this will also solve language barriers related to the SWIFT usage, and that the fact that now the settlement is in closing hours in Europe for the financial hubs in Europe will be settled with a 23 hours operability of the system. However, this is still not confirmed. There is still some, let's say, rumors and gossips within this system, but there is significant comments related to that the CIPS will challenge the SWIFT dominance at the end of the day. And that's also going back to trying to internationalize the renminbi, trying to have all the base and the financial framework towards using the renminbi freely, flexible, and as a, also as a supporting the definition of the IMF to be part of the SDR. Now, what we see in the German banking sector and related to the latest appointment of the Bank of China as a clearing bank in Frankfurt. We try to come up with a classification of the German banking sector in 3 groups, and because, of course, we identified 3 different relationships within the Chinese community and the use of the renminbi, of course. What we see is large international banks. Of course, we don't need to name them, but those banks have branches and representative offices in China. They develop also renminbi or China dedicated desks. They have probably also equity stakes in Chinese banks, so they are very, very related to and they know a lot about the Chinese regulatory environment for financial institutions. They develop specific products in renminbi, renminbi-denominated derivatives, renminbi settlement, etc. And they are within the leading tables of offshore renminbi bond issuances in Asia and Europe. We see names of those banks issuing Formosa bonds at the beginning of May. We see them issuing in Hong Kong as well, issuing in Frankfurt. And of course, they are promoting this renminbi internationalization very actively. We see also another group of local and regional banks that have very limited or no physical presence in China. But they still have some products for corporate clients, considering the large trade volume within German corporates and China, that they have some solutions in terms of renminbi, but they're still very limited. And last but not least, we have the Chinese banks branches, Bank of China, China Construction Bank, ICBC, opening and aspiring, as was also mentioned by the speaker before, to help to this development within the German economy and the Chinese economy towards increasing trade volumes, increases business, and build a bridge within those 2 economies. Those branches, of course, are still very small, I would say, but they offer a significant variety of products in renminbi, current accounts, lending, derivatives, and that's something that is very interesting because in a way they are developing faster and introducing the renminbi-denominated products in a faster way than any other bank in Europe, because they have the knowledge of the currency. They have, at the end of the day, the solutions towards the Chinese counterparties or the Chinese corporates. So it's a very interesting case to learn how those Chinese banks are promoting the renminbi internationalization, just coming completely directly from China. So what do we see in terms of challenges and opportunities for those three groups of banks? Of course, large international banks, there is not that much to say, apart from that they need to continue developing further the knowledge in terms of renminbi-denominated products, offering a wider set of products and following the corporate clients towards the needs of renminbi-denominated products to complement the offer compared to the offer that the Chinese banks are already setting up. Promoting the renminbi issuances not only in offshore centers like Frankfurt, but also going to do issuances in mainland China, Panda bonds, Formosa bonds, dim sum bonds, and promoting those bond issuance towards a different set of corporates, not just top tier 1, top 10 financial institutions or corporations, but providing to Chinese investors the opportunity to have a different or a more diversified set of securities and counterparties. And at the end of the day, that's one of the main opportunities for the renminbi to be an international currency, is to be used by different types of corporates as a funding tool, as a trade settlement currency, as an investment currency, and the more the usage of different kind of corporates will set the path for this renminbi internationalization. For those large international banks, also probably the message is to try to be part of the CIPS. If they do not have the status as a clearing bank, of course, to be part of the CIPS will facilitate any direct settlement. And also interesting to expand the operations on the free trade zones and anticipate the regulatory changes. We all have heard about the Shanghai Free Trade Zone and how the zone has been a tested environment for opening of the markets, for a more market-driven financial system, insurance system, and that's at the end of the day facilitating also the knowledge of the cultural differences that was already mentioned by one of the speakers before, that it's not just about having the regulatory framework in a more westernized way, but it's also to trying to understand the differences in the cultural difference, language difference, and way of doing business. For those local and regional banks, the message is, of course, they need to speed up the knowledge in terms of the renminbi usage and facilitate different financial products that are, at the end of the day, denominated in renminbi. Explore any other project related to lending, green bonds, as mentioned by our general manager. The green strategy of China is also towards investing in green bonds. And attract Chinese investors. At the end of the day, Chinese investors are willing to have different counterparties, as I mentioned, and the lack of counterparties that are different from China's origin is still very limited. Explore cooperation with Chinese banks to exchange information, expertise, to know the culture, explore opportunities in the free trade zone, and being more active in the use of RQFII. And that's one of the most important opportunities for the German investors and asset managers and corporations to approach and to understand and get the knowledge of how to deal and how to do business in China. And for Chinese banks, the opportunities, and of course, to continue expanding the offer, the offer of products denominated in renminbi, and to leverage on the renminbi specialization to attract different clients that are more reliant to financial institutions, consolidated European financial institutions. We have seen the ICBC, the Bank of China, being very active in lending in Europe, and that's going to continue happening. we should expect that those banks will continue and customizing liquidity solutions for renminbi-denominated products for those corporates that still are not familiarized with the renminbi and that they are expecting more knowledge towards the use of that currency. And also explore the cooperation with the German banks to exchange expertise. We believe that the renminbi internationalization is not just a process that will benefit China. Of course, this process will benefit the global financial system, the global growth, and Europe, the United States, Japan, Australia, Africa, they need to be open to this renminbi internationalization. This is not just as Mr. Miraski was mentioning, that China wants to dominate the world. That is not the message, and this is not the objective within this renminbi internationalization. It's just that such a big country cannot be locked and continue developing in-house, and just within, let's say, onshore growth. The connection and the exchange of information, the exchange of the cultural exchange, the investments and the financial opportunities towards China, moving outside of China, and Europe and any other country moving to China is so big, there are so much opportunities to learn from each other, that this renminbi internationalization program is just one little step to achieve to that goal. So there is nothing to be scared about the renminbi becoming an international or a reserve currency. We just need to embrace the fact that the renminbi is here to be part of the most used currency in the world, and that we need investment opportunities in renminbi coming from international counterparties. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Carola, for a very insightful presentation. Is there any immediate question from the floor? If that is not the case, there is one.
I have a question.
Is it on? Yes. One question regarding Martin Miller from Commerzbank. I have a question regarding the relationship between the clearing banks and CIPS. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't CIPS just mean that the clearing banks are obsolete?
That's a very interesting question, because that's some of the comments is that the CIPS will take over clearing banks. But at the end of the day, it's there are two different solutions to the same I will say the same problem. That is the lack of familiarity with renminbi. Corporations and big corporations that can have a connection with their house bank or those international banks that they are very familiarized with the renminbi, of course they will go to the CIPS system. But those corporations and those let's say more small corporations that are still learning and that are step by step using little by little using the renminbi, they will need more advisory, more support from banks, and that's where the clearing banks can make a difference in that sense. However, of course, those clearing banks in this case had been only Chinese banks, because there is no international bank appointed as a clearing bank. So it's also part of this program to make the Chinese banking system more internationally focused. Of course, in the long term, probably the clearing banks will not play a significant role, but we all know that this CIPS system will take time to be settled in an efficient and fully operational way. We expect that the basic functionalities will be by the end of the year, but to be able to be a fully used and expanded platform that can take years. We cannot compare now the CIPS with the SWIFT system, of course. And if we see that the comment is that only 20 banks are part of the testing, that's still very limited. So clearing banks will continue, we expect, playing a role towards introducing the renminbi within the European financial community, and the CIPS probably will be developed further, but of course that should take time.
My question was rather, CIPS, isn't this a system which is used between banks?
Yeah.
Between banks inside China and banks outside, so
Mm-hmm.
it is not the company using it itself. And so in the end, if
but
European banks can pay into China without using clearing banks, they will do so.
Yeah, of course, but at the end of the day, and that's what will be the conditions to be part of the CIPS. Because you need to have a specific operational frameworks, the language barriers, the settle of all the infrastructure to be connected to CIPS. So that's also a challenge for all the banks that want to be part of the system. So that's why those clearing banks that they already have the framework and the operability to do settlement will continue doing so if it's too expensive to be part of the CIPS. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.